She hugged a stranger to avoid her toxic ex, but the stranger was a billionaire who changed her life. A terrified young woman runs through a crowded airport, heart pounding, eyes full of panic. Her ex is closing in until she throws her arms around a stranger and whispers, "Please, pretend you know me." What starts as a desperate act of survival turns into something far more powerful. The man she clung to isn't just anyone. He's one of the richest men in the city, a man with secrets of his own, and a heart more broken than hers. When fate brings them together again, kindness turns into connection, and connection turns into scandal. But just as hope returns, the past comes storming back. Lies, love, and second chances collide in a story that will test faith, forgiveness, and the power of one unexpected hug. Can two broken souls heal each other? Or will the past destroy the only chance they'll ever have at peace? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The grey afternoon sky hung heavy over Atlanta's bustling airport, matching Mila Carter's troubled mood as she gripped her worn duffel bag tighter. Her phone buzzed again, the 15th time that morning, and her heart jumped. Another message from Tyrone. "You think you can just leave? Watch your back." Mila's hands trembled as she shoved the phone deep into her jacket pocket. The terminal crowd moved around her in waves of rolling suitcases and hurried footsteps, but she felt frozen in place. Her eyes darted anxiously between the terminal's glass doors and the security checkpoint ahead. That's when she saw him. Tyrone's tall frame moved through the entrance, his head turning side to side as he scanned the crowd. The familiar sight of his leather jacket and confident stride sent ice through her veins. She'd hoped he wouldn't actually show up, that his threats were just empty words like so many times before. Panic clawed at her chest. If he caught her now, after all her careful planning. Her breath came in short gasps as she looked desperately for an escape route. Without thinking, Mila stumbled forward, drawn to a man standing alone near the ticket counter. He wore an expensive navy suit that spoke of quiet authority, his posture straight, but somehow weighted with invisible burdens. Something in his calm demeanor made her move toward him. Before she could second-guess herself, Mila wrapped her arms around the stranger's solid frame. She felt him stiffen in surprise, but she held on, pressing her face against the soft fabric of his suit jacket. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Just play along. Please." For one terrifying moment, the man remained completely still. Then, slowly, carefully, his arms came around her. The embrace was tentative at first, but as Mila trembled against him, his hold became more secure, more protective. Through her peripheral vision, she could see Tyrone. He had stopped dead in his tracks, his face twisted with anger as he watched the scene unfold. The stranger must have sensed something too, because his embrace tightened slightly, his body shifting to better shield her from view. Seconds stretched into minutes as they stood there, an island of stillness in the flowing river of travelers. Mila could hear the stranger's steady heartbeat under her ear, feel the rise and fall of his chest. Despite her fear, she found herself drawing strength from his unwavering presence. Finally, when she was sure Tyrone had gone, Mila stepped back. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment as she met the stranger's eyes. They were a deep brown, kind but carrying shadows of their own, the same kind of shadows she saw in her mirror every morning. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, smoothing her shirt with shaking hands. "I didn't know what else to do. Thank you." The man studied her face for a moment, his expression gentle but unreadable. "Are you safe now?" His voice was low and steady, with a hint of genuine concern that made her throat tight with unexpected emotion. Mila nodded quickly. "Yes, Yes, I think so. I'm Mila. The words tumbled out before she could stop them, a small offering of trust to thank him for his kindness. David, he replied simply, and something in the way he said it made her think he didn't share his name often. They stood in awkward silence for a moment, surrounded by the buzz of airport announcements and rolling luggage. David seemed about to say something more, but instead just nodded once, his eyes still holding that strange mixture of kindness and distance. As they parted ways, Mila couldn't help glancing back. David had already merged into the crowd, his navy suit disappearing among the masses of travelers. But the memory of his steady presence lingered, like the echo of a song you can't quite remember but know you've heard before. Making her way to her gate, Mila sank into one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs. Her hands had finally stopped shaking, but her mind was full of questions. Who was David? Why did his eyes hold such sadness? She'd seen grief before, lived with it really, and recognized its weight in others. The sky outside had darkened to a deeper grey, and fat raindrops began to splatter against the massive terminal windows. Mila watched them trace patterns down the glass, each drop racing to reach the bottom first. Her phone stayed silent now, but she knew this wasn't over. Tyrone had never taken rejection well. As her flight was called and she joined the line to board, Mila found herself offering up a quiet prayer. Lord, I know I haven't talked to you much lately, but I could really use some help right now. Please let this be a new start. Please let me find my way again. The plane's engines hummed to life as she settled into her seat, and soon they were climbing through the clouds, leaving Atlanta and Tyrone behind. Mila pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the city lights grow smaller below. She thought again of the stranger who had helped her, of the unexpected kindness in those sorrow-filled eyes. She couldn't know then how that brief moment of compassion between strangers would ripple outward, setting in motion changes neither of them could have imagined. As the plane broke through the cloud cover into clear sky, Mila closed her eyes, exhausted but grateful for at least this one small mercy, a kind stranger's arms when she needed them most. The gentle voice of the flight attendant came over the intercom, announcing their cruising altitude, but Mila barely heard it. Her mind kept returning to that moment in the terminal, the solid strength of David's embrace, the way he'd understood without words what she needed. In a world that had lately seemed full of threats and shadows, that simple act of protection felt like a reminder that good people still existed. She pulled out her journal, its pages worn from use, and began to write. Sometimes that was the only way to make sense of things, to put the words down on paper and let them tell their own story. As her pen moved across the page, she found herself describing not just what had happened, but how it had felt. The terror of seeing Tyrone, the desperate inspiration that had led her to David, and the strange peace she'd found in a stranger's arms. Outside her window, the sun was setting, painting the clouds in shades of pink and gold. Mila watched the colors change, thinking about new beginnings and unexpected guardians. She didn't know what waited for her at her destination, but for the first time in a long while, she felt something that seemed almost like hope. The morning sun filtered through thin curtains as Mila dragged her duffel bag up 3 flights of stairs to her small apartment. Every step felt heavy with exhaustion, but each one also carried her further from Atlanta and the life she'd left behind. The familiar scent of lemon cleaner and fresh coffee welcomed her home, making her shoulders relax for the first time in days. Well, look who finally decided to show her face. A warm voice called from the landing above. Layla Johnson stood there in her favorite yellow cardigan, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in its usual neat bun, and her dark eyes sparkled with both humor and concern. "Miss Layla." Mela breathed out, managing a tired smile. I should have known you'd be waiting. Child, I've been your landlord long enough to know when something's not right. Layla descended the remaining stairs, expertly balancing the coffee cups. And you running off to Atlanta without warning? That's not right at all. Mela accepted one of the mugs gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. I had to take care of some things. Layla raised an eyebrow. Running from storms instead of facing them seems like to me. Her tone was gentle despite the criticism. Come on up to my place. You look like you need to talk more than you need to unpack. Minutes later, they sat in Layla's cozy kitchen, where countless conversations had unfolded over cups of coffee and pieces of whatever Layla happened to be baking. Today, the air smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. So, Layla said, sliding a warm slice of bread across the table. Want to tell me what really sent you running to Atlanta? Mela stared into her coffee cup. Tyrone found my number somehow. Started calling, texting. Said he'd changed, wanted to talk. She swallowed hard. I thought, maybe if I saw him in person, told him face to face to leave me alone. Lord, give me strength. Layla muttered, shaking her head. That man is about as changed as a leopard spots. Tell me you didn't actually meet with him. No. Mela said quickly, then hesitated. Well, not exactly. He showed up at the airport, but... She felt her cheeks warm, remembering David's unexpected kindness. Someone helped me avoid him. Someone? Layla's eyes narrowed with interest. Must have been quite someone to put that look on your face. Mela ducked her head, focusing on buttering her bread. It was nothing. Just a stranger being kind when I needed it. Layla hummed again, clearly unconvinced. Well, seems to me you need to focus on moving forward, not looking back. Have you been applying for new jobs? Some, Mela admitted, but you know how it is. Everything wants years of experience or fancy degrees. God opens doors when we least expect it, Layla said firmly. You just keep knocking, and the right one will open. She reached across the table to pat Mila's hand. And in the meantime, you've got family right here. Mela blinked back sudden tears. Layla wasn't really family, but she'd been more of a mother figure than anyone else in Mela's life lately. Thank you, Miss Layla. Now go get some rest, Layla ordered, standing up. You look dead on your feet. And Mela? She waited until Mela met her eyes. No more running off without telling me, you hear? Yes, Ma'am, Mela promised, managing a real smile this time. The next few days passed in a blur of job applications and careful screening of her calls. Then, on a particularly grey Wednesday morning, an email appeared in her inbox that made her heart skip a beat. The Wellspring Foundation was inviting her to interview for a community coordinator position. The organization focused on providing support and resources to communities in need, exactly the kind of meaningful work she'd been hoping to find. The pay listed in the email made her eyes widen. It was fair, more than fair, and the benefits package seemed almost too good to be true. She read and reread the mission statement, feeling a growing excitement. This was exactly what she needed, a chance to help others while building a new life for herself. The interview was scheduled for the following afternoon. Mela spent hours preparing, researching the foundation, and choosing her outfit carefully. A professional navy blue dress that made her feel confident and capable. The foundation's offices occupied a modern building downtown, all glass and steel but somehow welcoming, with planters full of bright flowers softening the entrance. Inside, she was greeted by a friendly receptionist and shown to a conference room where 3 people waited to interview her. They asked thoughtful questions about her experience, her goals, her ideas for community outreach. Mela found herself relaxing as she answered, passionate about the possibility of making a real difference. Halfway through the interview, movement beyond the glass wall caught her eye. A tall figure in a familiar navy suit passed by, then paused. Mila's words faltered as recognition hit her like a physical force. David, the stranger from the airport, stood there, watching the interview with an unreadable expression. Their eyes met through the glass, and he gave her a quiet nod of acknowledgement but said nothing. In that moment, everything clicked into place. David Wallace wasn't just passing by. He was the Foundation's anonymous founder, the driving force behind all this good work. The interview panel seemed not to notice the silent exchange. They continued with their questions, and Mila forced herself to focus, to give them her best answers despite the way her mind was spinning. When they finished, the head interviewer smiled warmly. "Well, Miss Carter, I think we've seen everything we need to see. We'd like to offer you the position, if you're interested in joining us." Mila's heart soared. "Yes," she said immediately. "Yes, I would love to join the Foundation." They discussed start dates and paperwork, but David didn't return to the conference room. As Mila left the building, clutching her offer letter, she felt oddly disappointed not to see him again. But maybe that was for the best. Their paths had crossed twice now in the most unexpected ways. Perhaps that was enough of a miracle for one lifetime. That night, Mila sat by her window, listening to the gentle tap of rain against the glass. The offer letter lay on her small desk, already signed and ready to return tomorrow. For the first time in months, maybe even years, she felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Hope. Real, tangible hope for a future that looked brighter than her past. She thought about how a single moment of kindness in an airport had somehow led her here, to this new beginning. The rain continued its soft rhythm against her window, but now it sounded less like loneliness and more like possibility. Mila arrived at the Wellspring Foundation's office early Monday morning, her heart fluttering with equal parts excitement and nervousness. The modern building looked different in the soft morning light, more welcoming than imposing. She smoothed down her carefully chosen outfit, a forest green blouse and black slacks, and took a deep breath before pushing through the glass doors. The receptionist from her interview, Sarah, greeted her with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mila. Ready for your first day?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Mila replied, managing a small laugh. "Don't worry, we're all family here," Sarah assured her, standing up to guide her through the office. The space buzzed with energy as people moved between desks and meeting rooms, chatting and laughing. "Let me introduce you to everyone." Over the next hour, Mila met so many people her head spun trying to remember all their names. There was Marcus in accounting, who had a booming laugh, and photos of his 3 kids plastered across his cubicle walls. Jenny from program development, whose bright pink hair matched her personality. Thomas, the IT manager, who spoke softly but lit up when talking about the Foundation's database system. "Our main focus is helping single parents get back on their feet," Jenny explained as she showed Mila to her desk. "We provide everything from childcare assistance to job training programs. You'll be coordinating with local community centers to identify families in need." Mila's heart warmed at the mission. "That's amazing. I can't wait to help." Throughout the morning, she couldn't help but notice David Wallace's office door remained firmly closed. The large corner office had frosted glass walls, offering only the vaguest suggestion of movement within. Occasionally, she caught glimpses of him passing through the hallway, always impeccably dressed in perfectly tailored suits. Each time, he offered a polite smile and nod, but his eyes remained distant, like he was looking through rather than at her. During lunch, Jenny pulled her into the break room. "Don't take it personally," she said, noticing Mila's gaze drift toward David's office. "He's like that with everyone. Brilliant man. Incredibly generous, but... She shrugged. There's definitely a wall there. Mila nodded, remembering the careful way he'd held himself even during their brief encounter at the airport. There was something guarded about him, like someone who'd learned to keep the world at arm's length. The afternoon flew by in a whirlwind of training sessions and paperwork. Before she knew it, the office had emptied out, leaving her alone with her new employee handbook and a head full of information. As she gathered her things to leave, she heard quiet footsteps in the hallway. David stood in his office doorway, his suit jacket draped over one arm, staring at something in his hand. Mila realized it was a silver-framed photograph. His expression made her chest ache, raw pain briefly visible before he noticed her presence and quickly slipped the photo into his briefcase. "Good first day?" he asked, his professional mask sliding back into place. "Yes, thank you." Mila answered softly, pretending she hadn't seen his moment of vulnerability. "The team is wonderful." He nodded, offered another polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, and headed for the elevator. Mila watched him go, wondering about the photo and the story behind it. When she got home, she found Layla Johnson waiting outside her apartment door with a covered dish that smelled divine. "Can't have you surviving on takeout your first week at the new job," Layla announced, following Mila inside. "Made my famous chicken and dumplings." "Miss Layla, you're an angel," Mila said, inhaling the comforting aroma. They sat at Mila's small kitchen table, and Layla studied her face carefully. "So, how was it? Everything you hoped for?" "Better," Mila admitted. "The work they do, helping single parents. It feels meaningful." Layla hummed, serving up 2 bowls. "And the mysterious Mr. Wallace?" Mila's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "What about him?" "Baby girl, I've been around long enough to recognize that look in your eyes." Layla's tone was gentle but firm. "Don't mistake kindness for connection. Men like that, successful, handsome, mysterious, they carry storms in their eyes. Whatever pain he's holding on to, it's not yours to fix." "I wasn't thinking." Mila started to protest, but Layla's knowing look stopped her. "He just seems sad. Today I saw him looking at a photo, and for a moment—" "Let it stay a moment," Layla advised. "Focus on building your own life first. The rest will sort itself out in God's time." The rest of the week passed in a blur of activity. Mila threw herself into learning everything she could about the Foundation's programs. She sat in on meetings, reviewed case files, and started building relationships with local community center directors. Her natural empathy and attention to detail earned her quick respect from her colleagues. "You have a real gift for this work," Marcus told her on Friday afternoon, after she'd spent an hour helping him restructure a funding proposal. "You see the people behind the paperwork?" Jenny agreed, dropping by Mila's desk with coffee. "Seriously, where have you been hiding? We needed someone like you." The praise made her blush, but it also gave her a sense of purpose she'd been missing. This wasn't just a job. It was a chance to make a real difference in people's lives. Throughout the week, David remained a peripheral presence. His office door opened for scheduled meetings and closed immediately after. He moved through the office like a ghost, professional but removed. Occasionally their paths would cross, and he'd acknowledge her with that same careful smile, but his eyes always seemed focused on something far away. On Friday evening, Mela stayed late to finish organizing her files for the following week. The office had grown quiet, most people having left early for the weekend. As she walked past David's office, she noticed his door was ajar for once. He stood by his window, silhouetted against the city lights, holding that same silver frame. This time, she could partially see the photo. A beautiful woman with laughing eyes and a small boy with David's dark hair, both beaming at the camera. The raw grief on David's face made her heart clench. Without making a sound, she continued past his door, letting him have his private moment with whatever ghosts he carried. The image stayed with her, though, not just the photo, but the man holding it. Beneath his polished exterior and careful distance, there was clearly a deep well of feeling. But Layla was right. Whatever story lay behind that photo, it wasn't hers to unravel. She had her own healing to focus on, her own path to walk. Still, as she drove home through the darkening city, she found herself saying a quiet prayer, not just for herself, but for the man who had inadvertently opened the door to this new chapter in her life, even if his own door remained firmly closed. The morning light filtered through the windows of Wellspring Foundation as Mila sorted through her emails. A new message from David Wallace caught her attention. Subject line: Urgent meeting request. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the brief message asking her to come to his office at 10 o'clock. Walking down the hallway 15 minutes later, she smoothed her blouse and took a deep breath before knocking. "Come in," David's voice called out. He stood by his desk, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by papers and presentation boards. The usual careful distance in his eyes had been replaced by something else. Excitement, maybe even hope. "I have an idea," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "We've been discussing a new outreach program for mothers in crisis, and I'd like you to help coordinate it." Mila leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of program?" "A comprehensive one," David explained, spreading out several documents. "Emergency housing, job training, childcare assistance, everything a mother needs to get back on her feet. We're planning a launch event next month to connect with local shelters and community organizations." His enthusiasm was contagious. For the next hour they discussed possibilities, with Mila offering insights from her own experiences working with struggling families. David listened intently, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. "This could really make a difference?" Mila said softly, reviewing the preliminary budget. "That's why I want you involved," David replied. "You understand these women's needs in a way that spreadsheets can't capture." They spent the next few weeks immersed in planning. Late nights became routine, their desk lights the only ones still glowing in the darkened office. Chinese takeout boxes and coffee cups littered their workspaces as they refined proposals and made countless calls. One evening, as they shared vegetable lo mein and reviewed vendor contracts, David noticed Mila absently touching the cross necklace she always wore. "Family heirloom?" he asked. She smiled, a touch of sadness in her eyes. "My grandmother's. She was the heart of our church. Community back home. Taught me that faith isn't just about Sunday services, it's about how you treat people every day." David nodded, setting down his chopsticks. "You still believe that? After everything?" Mila was quiet for a moment. "It's complicated. Growing up, everything seemed so clear. My parents raised me to believe in God's plan, in the goodness of people." She pushed her food around. "Then I met Tyrone." David's expression darkened at the name. "He was charming at first." Mila continued. "Said all the right things, went to church with me, acted like he shared my values. But slowly, things changed. The criticism started, the control, making me doubt myself, my worth, my faith." Her voice wavered. "By the time I left, I wasn't sure what I believed anymore." David's hand twitched, as if fighting the urge to reach across the table. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "No one deserves that." "What about you?" Mila asked gently. "Do you believe in anything anymore?" The silence stretched between them. Finally, David stood and walked to his window, his back to her. "I used to, before the accident." Mila waited, hardly breathing. 3 years ago, he continued, his voice rough. "My wife Sarah and our son James, They were driving home from his soccer practice. A drunk driver ran a red light. His shoulders tensed. I was supposed to pick him up that day, but I had a meeting that ran late. Sarah offered to go instead. David, Mila whispered, her heart aching. James was 8. He turned slightly, and she could see the tears he was fighting back. He loved space and dinosaurs and terrible knock-knock jokes. She was everything good in my world. And in one moment, they were gone. Mila stood and moved closer, not touching him, but offering her presence. I threw myself into the foundation after that, he admitted. Tried to make their deaths mean something. But some days... He shook his head. Some days I can barely breathe. I understand, Mila said softly. Not the same pain, but I understand feeling lost. They stood together in the quiet office, two wounded souls finding unexpected comfort in shared vulnerability. The night of the outreach event arrived clear and cool. The community center buzzed with energy as local organizations set up information booths and volunteers arranged refreshments. Mila moved through the space, making sure everything was perfect. She was checking the childcare area when a young woman approached, clutching a sleeping toddler and fighting back tears. I'm sorry, the woman whispered. I didn't know where else to go. We've been sleeping in my car. You're exactly where you need to be, Mila assured her, guiding her to a chair. For the next hour, she helped the woman, Marie, connect with housing resources and fill out emergency assistance forms. From across the room, David watched as Mila comforted Marie, her genuine compassion touching everyone she encountered. Something warm stirred in his chest, an emotion he'd thought long buried. Later, as they packed up supplies and collected scattered papers, David found Mila in the empty main room. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything tonight, the way you helped that young mother. He paused, searching for words. You remind me there's still light left in this world. Mila felt heat rise in her cheeks, her heart fluttering at the softness in his eyes. Thank you for giving me the chance to help. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. When Mila arrived home that night, Layla was waiting up, despite the late hour. There's that smile again, she observed, patting the couch beside her. Want to talk about it? Mila sank down, her emotions a tangle of hope and uncertainty. The event went really well. We helped so many people. Layla hummed. And I don't know. Mila twisted her hands in her lap. David and we've been talking more. Really talking. He told me about his wife and son. Layla's expression softened with understanding. That's a heavy burden he carries. I know, Mila whispered. And I'm still dealing with my own stuff with Tyrone. I'm not ready for... She trailed off. For feelings? Layla supplied gently. Mila nodded, the fear finally showing through her smile. What if I'm reading everything wrong? What if I trust again and get hurt? What if you take it one day at a time? Layla suggested, squeezing her hand. Let yourself heal. Let him heal. Trust God's timing. Mila leaned her head on Layla's shoulder, grateful for her wisdom and warmth. The night's events played through her mind. Marie's tears of relief, David's gentle words, the way he looked at her when he thought she wouldn't notice. Hope and fear danced in her heart, neither quite winning out. The autumn chill crept through Mila's thin jacket as she trudged up the stairs to her apartment. Her feet ached from a long day of community outreach, but satisfaction warmed her heart. The Wellspring Foundation had helped 3 more families find housing today. The hallway lights flickered as she reached her floor, casting dancing shadows on the worn carpet. Something white caught her eye, a piece of paper tucked beneath her door. Probably another notice from maintenance. she thought. But when she bent to pick it up, her fingers trembled. 2 words were scrawled in familiar handwriting. "Miss me?" The note slipped from her suddenly numb fingers. Tyrone. He'd found her. Mila fumbled with her keys, practically falling through her door before slamming it shut and engaging every lock. Her breath came in short gasps as she slid down to sit on the floor, pulling her knees to her chest. "Lord, please," she whispered, rocking slightly. "Please keep me safe." She jumped at a knock, then relaxed, hearing Layla's voice. "Mila, you okay, honey? I heard the door slam." Mila opened up, showing her the note with shaking hands. "Oh, baby girl." Layla pulled her into a fierce hug. "You're staying with me tonight. No arguments." That weekend, Mila tried to lose herself in work, buried in preparations for the quarterly board meeting. The Foundation's conference room buzzed with energy as board members filed in, their expensive suits and polished shoes a stark contrast to the room's modest furnishings. David stood at the head of the table, commanding attention without raising his voice. "Before we begin, I want to highlight some exceptional work being done by our newest team member." Mila's head snapped up from her notes. "Mila Carter has shown remarkable dedication these past months." David continued, his eyes finding hers across the room. "Her innovative approaches to community outreach have helped us reach 30% more families than last quarter." Pride and embarrassment warred in Mila's chest as several board members nodded approvingly. But even David's praise couldn't completely quiet the fear that had stalked her since finding that note. The meeting dragged on for 2 hours, budget discussions and program proposals blurring together. When they finally finished, Mila gathered her things slowly, dreading the walk to her car in the dimming evening light. The parking lot was nearly empty when she pushed through the heavy glass doors. A cool breeze carried the scent of approaching rain. Mila dug in her purse for her keys, trying to appear confident as she walked. "Looking good, baby girl." The voice froze her in place. Tyrone stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, all smooth charm and predatory grace in his expensive leather jacket. "What do you want?" Mila fought to keep her voice steady. He moved closer, hands spread in a gesture of false innocence. "Can't a man check on his girl? See how she's doing?" "I'm not your girl anymore." The words came out stronger than she felt. Tyrone's smile hardened. "No? Playing dress-up in your fancy office job, pretending you belong with these people?" His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "You owe me, Mila. All those months I supported you. Let go of me." She tried to pull away, but his fingers dug deeper. "Not until we discuss the money you took when you left." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. $5,000, Mila. Did you think I'd forget?" "That was my money," she protested. "I earned every penny of it. Everything you had was because of me." Tyrone's facade cracked, showing the rage beneath. "You ungrateful little—" "Is there a problem here?" David's quiet voice cut through the tension like a blade. He stood a few feet away, his tall frame radiating controlled anger. Tyrone's grip loosened slightly. "Just a private conversation with my lady." "I'm not your anything," Mila said, finally wrenching free. "Leave me alone, Tyrone." David moved closer, positioning himself between them. "You heard her. Leave." Tyrone's eyes narrowed as he sized up David. Well, well. Found yourself a white knight, huh?" He laughed, the sound ugly and sharp. "You think he's gonna save you? Wake up, Mila. You're just another charity case to these people." "The only person who needs to wake up is you." David's voice was ice. "Leave now, or I call security, and the police." Something in David's stance must have convinced Tyrone. He backed away, hands raised mockingly. "Whatever, she ain't worth the trouble anyway." He pointed at Mila. "But this ain't over, baby girl, not by a long shot." They watched him stalk away, disappearing into the growing darkness. Mila's legs suddenly felt too weak to hold her. "Hey." David caught her elbow, steadying her. "Let me drive you home. You're in no state to be behind the wheel." She nodded numbly, letting him guide her to his car, a surprisingly modest sedan that somehow suited him perfectly. The first 10 minutes passed in complete silence. Rain began to patter against the windshield, matching the rhythm of Mila's still racing heart. "He used to be everything I prayed for," she finally whispered, staring out at the wet streets. "Kind, ambitious, charming, until he became what I feared most." She swallowed hard. It happened so slowly I didn't even notice at first. A criticism here, a put down there, isolating me from friends, controlling the money. By the time he started... She couldn't finish the sentence. David's hands tightened on the steering wheel, but he stayed quiet, letting her speak. "I prayed so hard for God to change him." She continued. "Then one day I realized God was trying to give me the strength to save myself instead." They pulled up to her apartment building. The rain had intensified, drumming steadily on the car roof. Neither made a move to get out. "The money he mentioned?" David said carefully. "Was it really yours?" Mela nodded. "My savings from 2 jobs. He made me put it in his account, said he'd manage it for us. When I left, I took what was mine. But he..." She shuddered. "He sees it as stealing from him." "Mela." David turned to face her, his expression intense. "You don't have to handle this alone. Let me help." Their eyes met in the dim car interior, and something shifted in the space between them, a deepening of trust, a recognition of shared pain and healing. "Thank you," she whispered, meaning it for more than just the ride home. Lightning flashed in the distance as they sat there, 2 wounded souls finding shelter from their respective storms. Sunlight streamed through the office windows the next morning, catching dust motes in its golden beams. Mila sat at her desk, trying to focus on her computer screen, but her mind kept drifting back to the previous evening's confrontation. Her wrist still bore faint marks from Tyrone's grip, which she carefully concealed beneath her sleeve. The soft tap of footsteps made her look up. David stood there, his expression concerned as he studied her face. "How are you holding up?" he asked quietly, leaning against her desk. Mila managed a small smile. "I'm okay, just trying to stay focused on work." David nodded, then pulled up a chair to sit beside her desk. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that. There's a new project I'd like you to consider." She turned to face him fully, curious despite her lingering anxiety. "It's called the Renew Hope Initiative," he continued, his voice warming with enthusiasm. "We're developing a program to fund safe housing for women leaving abusive relationships. The foundation will partner with local shelters, provide financial assistance, legal support." He paused, watching her reaction carefully. "Given your insight and personal experience, I think you'd be perfect to help lead this." Mila's throat tightened with emotion. "You're creating this because of what happened yesterday?" "No." David shook his head. "It's been in development for months, but meeting you, seeing your strength, it confirmed how vital this program is." His eyes met hers. "What do you say?" "Yes," she whispered, then stronger. "Yes, absolutely." Over the next week, they threw themselves into the project. Their days filled with meetings, phone calls, and planning sessions that often stretched into evening hours. But unlike her previous late nights at work, these felt different, purposeful, and somehow lighter. They developed an easy rhythm, trading ideas and building on each other's thoughts. David's business acumen complemented Mila's emotional understanding of their target population. When they hit roadblocks, They'd order takeout and brainstorm solutions over coffee and shared fortune cookies. One evening, as they reviewed shelter partnerships, David noticed Mila smiling at her computer screen. "What is it?" he asked. "Just reading an email from one of the shelter directors," she replied, her eyes bright. "She says our funding could help them double their capacity. Do you know what that means? Twice as many women finding safety, getting a second chance." David watched her, something soft in his expression. "You really care about this, don't you? How can I not?" She turned to face him. "I remember how it feels, thinking you're trapped, that there's no way out. If we can give even one woman hope." She trailed off, suddenly self-conscious under his intense gaze. "You're remarkable, you know that?" His voice was quiet but firm. The compliment caught her off guard. "I'm just trying to help. That's exactly what makes you remarkable." He smiled, then glanced at his watch. "It's getting late. We should probably call it a day." They gathered their things and walked to the parking lot together. The evening air was cool and sweet, streetlights casting soft halos in the growing dusk. Their footsteps echoed in comfortable synchronization. Near her car, David suddenly stopped. Mila turned to look at him, caught by the vulnerability in his expression. "You make me believe healing's possible," he said softly, the words carrying weight in the quiet evening air. Mila's heart skipped. Looking into his eyes, she saw her own journey reflected. The pain, the fear, but also the tentative hope. "Maybe we're both trying to remember how to live again," she murmured. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken understanding. Then David smiled gently and stepped back. "Drive safely. I'll see you tomorrow." Later that night, Mila knelt beside her bed, hands clasped in prayer. "Lord," she whispered, "I'm scared. Not of Tyrone anymore, but of hoping, of trusting, of maybe even—" She couldn't finish the thought aloud. "Please give me courage. Show me the way." Across town, David stood in his home office, looking at the photograph he usually kept hidden in his desk drawer. His wife's smile beamed back at him, their son's face bright with laughter. "I think I finally met someone who'd understand," he whispered to the image. "Someone who knows what it means to rebuild from ashes." He touched the frame gently. "I think you'd like her, Sarah. She has your kind of light." The photograph seemed to smile back at him, and for the first time in 3 years, the sight didn't break his heart. Instead, he felt something new stirring, like the first warm breeze of spring after a long, cold winter. Mila stood before the full-length mirror in her apartment, tugging nervously at the emerald green dress she'd found at the local thrift store. Though carefully steamed and altered, she worried it might still somehow broadcast its second-hand origins to the wealthy crowd at tonight's Wellspring Foundation annual charity gala. "Stop fussing," Layla called from the doorway, where she leaned with arms crossed and a knowing smile. "That dress looks like it was made for you." "Are you sure?" Mila smoothed the fabric again. "I mean, these people probably spend more on their shoes than I make in a month. Honey, you shine from the inside out. That matters more than any designer label." Layla crossed the room and adjusted Mila's pearl necklace, a cherished gift from her grandmother. "Besides, you're not there to impress anyone. You're there because you've helped change lives." Mila took a deep breath, trying to believe it. The past month had been a whirlwind of preparation for the gala, Wellspring's biggest fundraising event of the year. Between coordinating with caterers, preparing presentation materials, and helping David rehearse his keynote speech, she'd barely had time to worry about her own appearance. Until now, the knock at her door made her jump. "That'll be your ride." Layla winked, heading to answer it. David Wallace stood in the hallway, cutting an impressive figure in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. His usual businesslike demeanor had softened into something more elegant, more approachable. When his eyes found Mila, they widened slightly. "You look—" He paused, searching for words. "Beautiful." Mila felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." "Your carriage awaits, my dear," he said with a slight bow, offering his arm. The playful gesture helped ease her nerves. As they approached the hotel where the gala was being held, Mila's anxiety returned full force. Camera flashes greeted them at the entrance, and she could hear the murmur of hundreds of voices from inside. She hesitated at the door. "David, I don't know if I—" "You look like you belong here," he said warmly, placing his hand over hers where it rested on his arm. "Because you do belong here. You've done more real good in 6 months than most of these people have done in their lives." His quiet confidence steadied her. Together, they entered the grand ballroom. The space was transformed into an elegant wonderland of twinkling lights and flowing champagne. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in ivory linens, while centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath created an atmosphere of ethereal beauty. To Mila's surprise, she found her footing quickly. Years of customer service had taught her how to make people feel heard and valued, skills that translated perfectly to donor interactions. She shared passionate stories about the women they'd helped through the Renew Hope initiative, while David provided the practical framework of numbers and future goals. "You see that couple over there?" David whispered during a brief, quiet moment. "They just pledged $1 million to expand our housing program." $1 million? Mila gasped softly. "Because of you." He smiled. "Your stories touched their hearts. That's what I've been trying to tell you. You belong here because you make people care." As the evening progressed, they fell into an effortless rhythm. When David spoke to potential donors, Mila would add personal touches that brought the statistics to life. When she shared emotional testimonials, he would follow up with concrete ways to help. They moved through the crowd like dance partners, each anticipating the other's steps. During a quiet moment near the dessert table, a reporter from the Atlanta Society pages approached them, notebook in hand. "Mr. Wallace, Ms. Carter, you two make quite the impressive team. Are you a couple?" The question hung in the air. Mila felt her heart skip a beat as David's hand came to rest gently on her back. He didn't immediately deny it, instead offering a diplomatic smile. "We're dedicated to the Foundation's mission," he said smoothly. "Mila's contribution has been invaluable." The reporter scribbled in her notebook, clearly reading more into the non-denial and the protective gesture. Mila knew this would cause talk, but in that moment, with David's warm hand on her back, she found it hard to care. Later, as they swayed together during a slow dance, David murmured, "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable earlier, with the reporter." "No," she said softly, "though I suspect we'll be tomorrow's gossip." "Let them talk," he replied, his hand tightening slightly at her waist. "They'll find something new to gossip about next week." But the next morning proved him wrong. Mila woke to dozens of notifications on her phone. The photo had gone viral. David Wallace, the notoriously private billionaire philanthropist, looking at his unknown companion with unmistakable warmth. The headlines ranged from curious to sensational. "Billionaire's mystery woman," "Love at Wellspring," and "The unknown woman who captured Wallace's heart." Mortified, Mila could barely bring herself to go to work. When she finally did, she kept her head down, trying to ignore the whispers and stares from other employees. Around lunchtime, Layla showed up at her office with a paper bag of comfort food. "I saw the news," she said, pulling up a chair. "How are you holding up?" "I feel like I'm back in high school." Mila groaned. Everyone's talking about me, and not in a good way. If people talk, it means you're doing something that matters, Layla said firmly. Besides, have you seen the photo? That man looks at you like you hung the moon. Layla, Mila protested, but couldn't help smiling. I'm just saying what everyone else can see. Layla shrugged, unwrapping a sandwich. Now eat your lunch before it gets cold. Meanwhile, David was facing his own challenges. The board of directors had called an emergency meeting, concerned about the appearance of impropriety. Some worried it would affect donations, others suggested it might undermine the foundation's credibility. With all due respect, David's voice cut through the murmuring. Mila Carter has brought more value to this foundation in 6 months than many of us have in years. She works harder than anyone I know, cares deeply about our mission, and has impeccable integrity. If anyone suggests otherwise, they can take it up with me personally. The room fell silent. It was rare to see David Wallace show such emotion, and rarer still for him to issue what amounted to a challenge. That evening, as the office emptied, Mila was gathering her things when David appeared in her doorway. I hear the board meeting was interesting, she said quietly. Nothing for you to worry about. He replied, then added softly, I meant every word I said in there. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them. The friendship they'd built over months of working together had grown into something else, something tender and uncertain and full of possibility. Neither of them spoke of it directly, but they both felt it, a gentle warmth, like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. Thank you, Mila said finally, for defending me. Always, he answered simply. As they walked to the parking lot together, their shoulders occasionally brushing, both understood that something had changed. The viral photo hadn't just exposed them to public scrutiny, it had exposed feelings they'd been careful to keep hidden, even from themselves. In the gathering dusk, they paused by their cars, reluctant to part. The city lights twinkled around them like earthbound stars. And for a moment, all the gossip and speculation fell away. They were just two people, standing on the edge of something new and wonderful and terrifying. Good night, David, Mila said softly. Good night, Mila, he replied, his voice warm with unspoken words. As they drove their separate ways home, both felt the weight of things yet unsaid, of feelings growing too strong to ignore. The viral photo had merely captured what everyone else had already seen. Two hearts healing together, finding light in shared purpose and understanding. The morning after the viral photo incident, David appeared at Mila's desk with an unexpected proposition. How would you like to escape all this gossip? He asked, his eyes twinkling. There's a community center renovation project in your old neighborhood that could use our attention. Mila's face lit up. Really, I'd love that. The prospect of doing something meaningful felt like a lifeline after days of whispers and sideways glances. An hour later, they were driving through familiar streets in David's understated sedan. Mila watched the city landscape change, buildings growing shorter, trees more abundant. Her old neighborhood wasn't wealthy, but it had heart, something she could see David appreciated as he took in the carefully tended flower boxes and cheerful murals. The community center was buzzing with activity when they arrived. Local volunteers moved back and forth, carrying supplies and chatting animatedly. Children darted between the adults, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. It's exactly how I remember it, Mila said softly, taking in the worn brick building. I used to come here after school. David touched her elbow gently. Show me around? They walked through the renovation site, Mila pointing out where she'd done homework, played basketball, found refuge on hard days. David listened intently, his eyes soft with understanding. The library corner was my favorite spot, she explained, gesturing to a sunny alcove. I'd hide there for hours, reading everything I could get my hands on. We're adding more windows here, David said, pointing to the plans. More natural light for future readers. As they moved through the space, Mila noticed how different David seemed away from the office. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He stopped to chat with volunteers, asking questions and listening with genuine interest to their stories. The sun streamed through the windows, casting warm patterns on the floor. Children's laughter echoed from the playground outside, creating a soundtrack of joy that made Mila's heart feel lighter than it had in years. They joined a group working on the new reading nook. David knelt beside a small boy who was struggling with a hammer and nails, trying to secure a wooden plank. Here, let me show you, David said gently, demonstrating the proper technique. The boy watched with intense concentration, his tongue sticking out slightly as he tried to copy David's movements. Like this? The boy asked, managing a wobbly but successful hit. Perfect, David praised, steadying the board. You're a natural. The boy beamed at the compliment. Then, without warning, he threw his arms around David's neck in an impulsive hug. Thanks, Dad, he exclaimed, then immediately ran off to show his friends his handiwork. David froze, his face a complex mix of emotion. The hammer slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. Mila could see his shoulders trembling slightly, could read the raw pain in his eyes. The word Dad had struck deep, awakening memories of his lost son. Moving quietly to his side, Mila gently took his hand. He sees something good in you, she whispered, squeezing his fingers. Children have a way of seeing truth. David swallowed hard, his grip tightening on her hand. For a long moment they stayed like that, their joined hands a bridge across their separate griefs. As the afternoon wound down, David suggested dinner at a local diner Mila remembered from her childhood. The place was unchanged. Red vinyl booths, slightly sticky menus, and the best comfort food in Atlanta. They settled into a corner booth as twilight painted the sky in soft purples and blues. The waitress brought them coffee in thick white mugs, steam curling up in the diner's warm light. Thank you for today, Mila said, wrapping her hands around her mug. I needed to remember there's more to life than office gossip. Me too, David admitted. Being here, seeing real people, real lives being changed, it reminds me why we do what we do. Their conversation deepened as their food arrived. Between bites of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, they talked about faith, how Mila had found her way back to it, how David still struggled. I was so angry after losing them, he confessed, pushing his peas around his plate. I couldn't understand how a loving God could take away everything that mattered. Mila listened, her heart aching for his pain. Faith isn't about having all the answers, she said softly. Sometimes it's just about having hope that meaning exists, even when we can't see it. Is that how you survived, Tyrone? David asked carefully. Mila nodded slowly. That and forgiveness, not for him, but for myself. I had to forgive myself for staying so long, for believing I deserved less than love. You deserve everything good, David said with quiet intensity. They talked about starting over, how it felt impossible until suddenly it wasn't, how healing came in unexpected moments and unlikely places. Like an impromptu hug in an airport? David suggested with a small smile. Mila laughed softly. Like that, yes. The walk to her apartment was slow, neither wanting the evening to end. The city had quieted, streetlights casting gentle halos on the sidewalk. When they reached her door, David turned to face her, his eyes searching her face. The silence between them stretched, filled with unspoken words and possibilities. Then, with infinite gentleness, David leaned forward and kissed her. The kiss was soft, almost reverent. Mila felt peace flood through her, and with it, fear. She hadn't let anyone this close in years, hadn't dared to be this vulnerable. But there was something different about David, something that made her want to be brave. When they finally pulled apart, David rested his forehead against hers for a moment. No words were needed. They both understood the magnitude of what had just happened, the threshold they had crossed. Mila's heart thundered in her chest, a mix of terror and joy she hadn't felt since before Tyrone had stolen her ability to trust. But here, in this moment, with David's warm presence and the memory of children's laughter still echoing in her mind, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Sunlight streamed through Mila's bedroom window the next morning, warming her face. She stretched contentedly, remembering David's gentle kiss from the night before. Her fingers traced her lips, and a smile spread across her face. For the first time in years, her heart felt light, unburdened. She dressed with extra care, choosing a pale yellow blouse that made her dark skin glow. Even the morning traffic couldn't dampen her spirits as she drove to work, humming along to gospel music on the radio. The morning passed in a pleasant blur. David was in meetings, but he'd left a coffee cup on her desk with a yellow sticky note that simply read, "Thank you for yesterday." Such a small gesture, but it made her heart skip. Around 2 o'clock, her phone started buzzing incessantly. Text messages flooded in from friends, family, even old church members. At first she ignored them, focused on grant proposals. But when Sarah from accounting rushed to her desk with a concerned look, Mila knew something was wrong. "Have you seen it?" Sarah whispered, holding out her phone. Mila's stomach dropped as she read the headline on Atlanta's most notorious gossip site. "Gold digger alert. Unknown woman seduces billionaire David Wallace. Sources reveal dark past." Below were photos of her and David at the diner, clearly taken through the window. They looked intimate, happy, but the article twisted everything. It detailed her suspicious, rapid rise at the foundation, hinted at impropriety, and quoted an anonymous source about her history of targeting wealthy men. "She's always known how to play the victim," the source said. "Ask anyone who really knows her." Mila felt sick. She recognized Tyrone's words, his vindictive touch in every line. He'd been watching them, waiting for his moment to strike. The comment section was worse, people speculating about her character, making crude assumptions. Some recognized her from the gala photos and were especially vicious. Guess the charity case wanted more than just a job. Her phone rang. The foundation's board secretary. "Emergency board meeting in 30 minutes. Your presence is requested." Mila's hands shook as she gathered her things. In the bathroom, she splashed cold water on her face, trying to steady herself. The woman in the mirror looked scared, young, exactly what they'd expect from a gold digger. She thought bitterly. The boardroom was tense when she entered. David sat at the head of the table, his face unreadable. The board members, mostly older men in expensive suits, watched her with barely concealed judgment. "Miss Carter?" The chairman began. "I'm sure you understand why we're concerned. This foundation's reputation is built on helping people rebuild their lives." David interrupted, his voice tight. Which is exactly why we can't afford scandal." Another board member cut in. "The optics are terrible. A senior executive involved with an employee half his age, with a questionable past." "There is nothing questionable about Ms. Carter's work here," David argued, but Mila could hear the strain in his voice. He was torn between defending her and protecting the organization he'd built to honor his family's memory. She couldn't bear to watch him struggle. With trembling fingers, she pulled out the resignation letter she'd typed up in her office. "I appreciate everything the Foundation has done for me," she said quietly, placing the letter on the table. "But I won't let my presence harm the good work being done here." "Mila, wait!" David started to rise, but she was already moving towards the door. "Thank you for believing in me," she whispered, not looking back. In her office, she packed quickly. Just her photos, a few personal items. She left the coffee cup with its yellow note. Tears blurred her vision as she walked to her car, ignoring the whispers that followed her. The afternoon sun felt harsh now, exposing. She drove aimlessly, finally ending up at Layla's boarding house. Her landlord took one look at her face and opened her arms. "Oh, baby girl," Layla murmured as Mila collapsed against her. "Let it out." They sat on Layla's worn couch as Mila sobbed, telling her everything between hiccups. The kiss, the photos, the cruel comments. "I should have known better than to believe I was worth loving," she choked out. "Someone like him, someone like me. It was stupid to hope." "Now you stop that right there," Layla said firmly, taking Mila's tear-stained face between her hands. "Child, God don't make junk. He makes survivors, and you're one of the strongest I've ever met. But everyone thought Jesus was just a carpenter's son." Layla interrupted. "People's thoughts ain't God's thoughts, and their judgment ain't his judgment. You hold on to that." Across town, David drove through Atlanta's darkening streets, guilt gnawing at his insides. He should have acted faster, spoken more firmly. He should have protected her. The board meeting played over and over in his mind, her quiet dignity as she resigned, the defeat in her shoulders as she walked away. His phone showed dozens of missed calls from board members, PR specialists, his lawyers. They all wanted to manage the situation. But all he could think about was Mila's face when she'd read that article, the light in her eyes extinguishing. He pulled over near Piedmont Park, killing the engine. In the growing darkness, he could see couples walking, families heading home, normal lives untouched by scandal. His hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Tyrone had done this. David was sure of it. The man's toxic need for control had found a new weapon: public humiliation. And David, with all his wealth and power, had failed to shield Mila from it. The park lights flickered on, reminding him of yesterday's twilight, of that perfect moment when he'd finally found the courage to kiss her. Now it felt tainted, twisted into something ugly by malicious minds. He reached for his phone, then stopped. What could he say? "Sorry I let you down. Sorry I couldn't choose between you and the Foundation. Sorry I'm not brave enough to face down the board and the media and everyone else who wants to tear us apart." The words felt hollow, insufficient. So he sat there in his expensive car, a billionaire powerless to fix what mattered most, while somewhere in the city, the woman who'd taught him to feel again cried herself to sleep. In her apartment, Mila curled up on her bed, emotionally exhausted. Layla had made her tea, prayed with her, and promised to stay the night. But even her landlord's steady faith couldn't completely ease the ache in Mila's chest. Her phone lay silent now. She'd turned it off after seeing Tyrone's text. "Remember who you really are, baby. Just trying to help you stay humble." The cruelty of it, the calculated timing, the way he'd twisted her growing relationship with David into something sordid, it was all so perfectly, horribly Tyrone. He'd found a way to hurt her without leaving a single bruise. Through her window, she could see the city lights blurring through her tears. Somewhere out there, David was probably regretting ever hugging her in that airport, ever letting her into his carefully ordered world. She'd brought chaos and scandal to his door, just like Tyrone wanted. "Lord," she whispered into her pillow, "I know you don't make mistakes, but right now it hurts so much to trust that plan of yours." The night stretched long before her, filled with memories of David's smile, his gentle hands, the way he looked at her like she mattered. Now those memories felt like photographs burning at the edges, turning to ash in the heat of public scorn. Layla's words echoed in her mind. "God don't make junk. He makes survivors." But tonight, surviving felt like the hardest thing she'd ever done. The days after Layla's resignation blurred together like watercolors in the rain. She found herself walking past Wellspring's office building sometimes, muscle memory carrying her feet down familiar paths before she caught herself and turned away. The autumn chill had settled into Atlanta, leaves crunching beneath her sensible work shoes as she made her way to Sweet Grace Bakery each morning. The owner, an elderly woman named Miss Grace, had hired her on the spot. "Something in your eyes tells me you know what hard work means," she'd said, and Mila had nearly cried with gratitude. Now her days started at 4:30 in the morning, kneading dough and frosting cupcakes, letting the rhythmic work soothe her troubled mind. In quiet moments between customers, she'd catch glimpses of newspaper headlines or hear whispered conversations about David Wallace. She tried not to listen, but some words filtered through anyway. Reclusive, withdrawn, foundation struggling. Each snippet felt like a paper cut to her heart. Layla kept her updated, whether Mila wanted it or not. "That foundation's hurting without you," she'd say over their weekly Sunday dinners. "Donations down 30% since you left. They're saying he barely shows up anymore." "Please," Mila would whisper. "I can't bear to hear it." But she couldn't stop thinking about him either. Every time she volunteered at the community center they'd helped build together, memories flooded back. Children played on equipment they'd installed. Mothers attended classes in rooms they'd painted. Their shared dream lived on in every corner. One afternoon, while helping a young boy with his homework, she heard his mother talking about Wellspring's reduced funding. "We might have to cut some programs," the woman said sadly. "Such a shame. That Mila Carter, she really understood what we needed here." Mila had excused herself to cry in the bathroom, remembering how David had knelt beside that little boy, teaching him to hammer nails, how his eyes had softened when the child hugged him, how everything had seemed possible then. Across town, in his sprawling mansion, David Wallace sat alone in his study. The room felt cavernous now, echoing with absence. He'd retreated here after everything fell apart, just as he had after losing Sarah and Tommy. But this time, the isolation felt like punishment rather than refuge. His son's piano stood silent in the corner, gathering dust. Tommy had been learning "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" when the accident happened. Now David could barely look at it without hearing phantom notes, childish giggles, Sarah's patient encouragement. "I lost them because I couldn't fight," he whispered to the empty room. "I lost her for the same reason." The board had been pleased with his professional handling of the situation. The PR team praised his quick damage control. But their approval felt hollow now. He'd chosen the Foundation's reputation over Mila's heart, just as he'd chosen a late meeting over driving his family home that rainy night 3 years ago. Weeks passed. Thanksgiving came and went. David declined invitations and ignored concerned calls from friends. He threw himself into paperwork, trying to fill the void with numbers and reports. But every document reminded him of Mila's absence. Her neat handwriting in the margins, her thoughtful suggestions, her way of seeing past statistics to the human stories beneath. The community center's latest report showed declining attendance. Without Mila's personal touch, people were drifting away. She'd known every parent's name, every child's favorite color. He'd admired that about her, how she made everyone feel seen just as she'd made him feel seen. December arrived, bringing Christmas lights and holiday music. David avoided both. But one evening, finding himself alone with his thoughts, he sat at Tommy's piano. Dust coated the keys, and he realized he hadn't touched them since that kiss with Mila. His fingers found the simple melody Tommy had been learning. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, echoed through the empty house, clumsy and hesitant. Halfway through he stopped, overcome by memories, Tommy's small hands on the keys, Sarah's arms around them both, Mila's smile when he'd mentioned teaching his son music. That night, Christmas Eve, David Wallace did something he hadn't done since burying his family. He knelt beside his bed, just as he'd taught Tommy to do, and prayed. "God," he whispered, voice rough with disuse. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I've failed every person I've ever loved. But Mila, she believed in your grace. She saw good in me when I couldn't see it myself. Please, please forgive me. For everything." Miles away, in her small apartment, Mela sat alone in the darkness. The only light came from a single candle she'd placed in her window, a tradition her mother had taught her, symbolizing hope in dark times. The bakery had closed early for Christmas Eve, and the community center was quiet. She'd declined Layla's invitation for dinner, needing space to process the weight of memories this season brought. Her Bible lay open on her lap, pages worn smooth from years of seeking comfort in its words. The candle's flame cast flickering shadows as she read familiar verses about faith, hope, and love. "Lord," she prayed softly, "I know you have a plan, even when it hurts, even when I don't understand. Please help me forgive Tyrone for his cruelty, David for his fear, myself for hoping too much. And Lord, wherever David is tonight, please let him find the peace he's searching for." The candle burned steadily as city lights twinkled beyond her window. In two separate corners of Atlanta, two broken hearts offered up the same prayer, for forgiveness, for healing, for the courage to believe in love again. Outside, Christmas carols drifted up from carolers on the street below. The familiar melodies carried promises of peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Inside, Mila watched her candle burn and remembered another night, another light, the soft glow of street lamps as David told her she made him believe in healing. January brought with it a crisp chill and the promise of fresh starts. Mila sat at her tiny kitchen table, staring at the cream-colored envelope that had arrived that morning. The community center's logo gleamed in gold lettering at the top, an invitation to the grand reopening ceremony. Her fingers traced the embossed letters, remembering late nights spent planning this very event. The center had been their shared dream, hers and David's, back when everything felt possible. Now it felt like touching a bruise that hadn't quite healed. "I don't think I can go," she murmured, pushing the invitation away. Layla Johnson, who had stopped by with her famous cinnamon rolls, clicked her tongue disapprovingly. She settled into the chair across from Mila, her warm brown eyes full of wisdom earned through years of counseling broken hearts. "Child, when are you going to stop running?" Layla asked, reaching across to take Mila's hand. "Those people need you, not David Wallace, not the foundation, the mothers, the children, the families who'll walk through those doors looking for hope." Mila sighed, picking at the edge of the tablecloth. "But what if he's there? What if everyone starts whispering again? I can't—" "Can't what?" Layla interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. "Can't show them that a good woman stands tall even when life knocks her down. Can't prove that your worth isn't tied to what people say about you." Through her window, Mila could see the winter sun casting long shadows across her small balcony. The potted plants she'd nursed back to health after nearly dying in the fall were showing new growth, tiny green shoots reaching towards the light. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. Layla squeezed her hand. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when your knees are shaking. That evening, Mila pulled out her simplest dress, a navy blue wrap dress that had seen her through countless job interviews and church services. It wasn't fancy like the gown she'd worn to the gala, but it was honest. Real. Like her. She spent extra time braiding her hair into neat rows, the way her mother had taught her. Each twist and turn felt like armor being put on, preparing for battle. When she finished, she studied her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked tired but determined. "Lord," she prayed softly, "give me strength to walk through those doors with my head high." Across town, in the pre-dawn hours before the ceremony, David Wallace moved quietly through the community center's halls. He'd been coming here for weeks now, volunteering under the name John Smith. No one recognized the billionaire in worn jeans and work boots, and that's how he preferred it. He swept floors, fixed flickering lights, painted walls, manual labor that left his hands blistered, but his conscience a little lighter. Each task felt like a small act of penance, not just for Mila, but for every time he'd chosen safety over courage. The morning sun was just beginning to stream through the windows when he heard voices approaching. The ceremony would start soon. He quickly grabbed his broom, keeping his head down as early arrivals began filtering in. The community center had transformed from the shell it had been months ago. Fresh paint brightened the walls, new computers lined the resource room, and colorful children's artwork already decorated the daycare area. Everything Mila had envisioned was here, except her. David had just finished sweeping the main hall when he heard a familiar voice at the entrance. His heart stopped. Mila stood in the doorway, sunlight catching the edges of her braided hair. She wore a simple blue dress that made her look both stronger and more vulnerable than he remembered. Her chin was lifted, but he could see the slight tremor in her hands as she clutched her purse. Time seemed to freeze as their eyes met across the room. David's hands tightened on the broom handle, his carefully maintained anonymity crumbling in the weight of her gaze. He saw the moment recognition dawned, saw hurt, surprise, and something else flash across her face. She hadn't expected to find him here like this. Sleeves rolled up, face humbled, doing the kind of work he used to fund with a signature. The billionaire turned janitor, trying to earn back what money couldn't buy. The broom felt heavy in his hands, but he couldn't look away. Around them, people continued arriving, their voices creating a buzz of excitement. But for David and Mila, the world had narrowed to this single moment, to the space between who they had been and who they were now. A small boy darted between them, breaking the spell. Mila blinked and turned away, moving deeper into the crowd. David watched her go, the distance between them feeling both vast and paper-thin. He had imagined this moment differently in his dreams, grand speeches, public apologies, dramatic reconciliations. But now, covered in dust and holding a broom, he realized that maybe this was better. Maybe real redemption started here, not with big gestures, but with small acts of service and silent humility. The ceremony would begin soon. David retreated to the maintenance closet to store his cleaning supplies, his heart pounding with the weight of unspoken words. Through the crowd, he caught glimpses of Mila greeting old friends, her smile genuine despite the tension in her shoulders. She was here. After everything, she had come. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of something, or perhaps the continuation of something that had never really ended. The morning light streamed through the windows, painting everything in shades of possibility. In its glow, two people who had lost their way began the delicate work of finding it again, one small step at a time. The crowd seemed to part naturally as Mila took her first tentative steps toward David. The bustling noise of the community center, excited chatter, children's laughter, chairs scraping across floors, all faded into a distant hum. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears with each step. David stood completely still, the broom forgotten against the wall. His usual polished appearance was replaced by something rawer. His rolled sleeves revealed strong forearms marked with paint stains, and his face showed signs of genuine physical labor. When she reached him, close enough to see the flecks of dust on his shirt, Mila's voice came out barely above a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." His blue eyes met hers steadily. "Neither should you," he replied, his voice equally soft. Then something shifted in his expression, a gentle breaking, like sunlight through clouds. A sad smile touched his lips as he added, "But maybe this is exactly where we both belong." Mila wrapped her arms around herself, fighting the urge to step back. "Why are you really here, David?" He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, a gesture that reminded her of long nights planning events together over takeout containers. "I resigned from Wellspring's board," he said simply. Her eyes widened. "What, but the foundation?" "Is being rebuilt from the ground up," he finished. "New mission, new board, new everything." He glanced around at the community center, at the fresh paint and new furniture, at the families already making the space their own. "You were right, Mila. I needed faith more than control. I've spent 3 years trying to buy my way out of grief, trying to control everything so I wouldn't have to feel anything." His voice cracked slightly. "But you showed me another way. You taught me that real change happens here, on the ground, one person at a time. Not in boardrooms or at galas." Mila felt tears gathering in her eyes, hot and insistent. "David, I was a coward," he continued, his words coming faster now. "When Tyrone tried to destroy your reputation, I should have stood beside you. Instead, I let fear win again, just like I've been doing since I lost Sarah and Tommy." A tear slipped down Mila's cheek. She could see the weight of regret in every line of his face, could hear the sincerity in every word. And something else, hope, fragile but real. "I forgive you," she said softly, surprising herself with how true the words felt. "Not because you deserve it, or because what happened was okay. I forgive you because I need peace, because holding on to hurt only hurts me more." David's shoulders sagged with visible relief. Before he could respond, someone called out that the ribbon-cutting ceremony was about to begin. The background noise rushed back in. People gathering, cameras being positioned, excited children bouncing on their toes. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then David gestured towards the crowd with a tentative smile. "Shall we?" Mila nodded, falling into step beside him as they joined the gathering. Their shoulders brushed occasionally as they found their places, and neither pulled away. The mayor was speaking now, praising the community center's transformation. But Mila barely heard the words. Instead, she felt the warmth of David's presence beside her, solid and real. She thought about second chances and God's timing, about how sometimes the longest journey could lead you right back to where you started, but as a different person, stronger and wiser for having made the trip. The scissors glinted in the morning light as they cut through the red ribbon. Applause erupted around them, and Mila found herself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in weeks. Beside her, David's hand found hers and squeezed gently. She squeezed back. The sun had begun its descent, painting the Atlanta sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The celebration inside the community center was winding down, with volunteers stacking chairs and parents gathering their tired children. Outside, the golden glow of streetlights flickered to life one by one, casting warm pools of light on the concrete steps where Mila and David sat. The evening air held a gentle chill, just enough to make Mila pull her cardigan closer around her shoulders. The concrete steps were cool beneath them, but neither seemed eager to move. After the whirlwind of the day's events, the ribbon cutting, the tours, the proud showing of new facilities, this quiet moment felt like a gift. David's voice broke the comfortable silence, low and sincere. "I've been thinking about that day at the airport," he said, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon. "When you hugged me out of nowhere." Mila felt warmth creep into her cheeks at the memory. "I was so scared that day," she admitted, "running from everything I knew." "But you weren't really running." David turned to look at her, his expression earnest. "You were being brave enough to start over." He shifted slightly, taking a deep breath as if gathering courage. That moment, it was the first time in 3 years someone had hugged me like that. Really hugged me, I mean. After Sarah and Tommy died, people treated me like I was made of glass. But you just held on. Mila watched his profile in the golden light, seeing the vulnerability etched in every line of his face. Her heart ached with understanding. "Mila," he continued, his voice growing stronger with each word, "you reminded me what it means to live again. Not just exist, not just go through the motions, but really live. You're my miracle, Mila." The words hung in the air between them, pure and true. Mila felt tears prick at her eyes, but they weren't sad tears. She leaned over, resting her head on his shoulder. The fabric of his shirt was soft against her cheek. "Maybe," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We both were meant to be broken first, so we'd know what healing feels like." David's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her closer. The moment felt sacred, like a prayer spoken in the space between heartbeats. The streetlights cast their gentle glow, and the evening wrapped around them like a blanket. The sound of approaching footsteps made them look up. Layla Johnson was making her way towards them, carrying 3 steaming thermoses. Her wise eyes took in the scene before her, and a knowing smile spread across her face. "Well now," she said, her voice warm with affection. "Looks like I brought this hot cocoa at just the right time." She handed them each a thermos, the metal warm against their hands. Mila couldn't help but smile at her landlord and friend, remembering all the late-night talks and words of wisdom Layla had shared over the past months. "How do you always know exactly when you're needed, Miss Layla?" Layla settled herself on the step below them, her eyes twinkling. "Told you, child. God writes the best love stories." She took a sip from her own thermos. "He just sometimes needs us to be patient while he works out all the details." Laughter rippled between the 3 of them, soft and pure, carried on the evening breeze. It was the kind of laughter that heals, that makes broken things whole again. Mila felt it in her chest, warm as the cocoa in her hands, sweet as the promise of tomorrow. They sat there together, watching the last colors fade from the sky, sharing comfortable silence and occasional sips of cocoa. The community center stood behind them, a testament to what could be built from broken pieces when faith and love showed the way. Spring blossomed into summer, and summer faded into fall as Mila and David poured their hearts into their most meaningful project yet. The Hug Foundation took shape in a renovated 3-story building on the outskirts of Atlanta, its brick facade freshly painted in warm, welcoming colors. "We need more than just beds and walls," Mila had insisted during the planning phase, her eyes bright with purpose. "We need to create a home." David had smiled, watching her sketch out ideas for comfortable reading nooks and sunny community spaces. "You always see beyond the surface," he'd said softly, remembering how she'd seen past his own carefully constructed walls. The foundation quickly became more than just another charity. Women across the city began whispering about it in hushed, hopeful tones, a place where second chances weren't just promised, but delivered. Each room was furnished with care, each common area designed to foster healing and connection. Layla Johnson, with her trademark mix of tough love and tender wisdom, stepped into the role of lead counselor as naturally as breathing. Her office became a sanctuary where tears could fall freely and broken spirits could begin to mend. "The Lord works in mysterious ways," she'd say, settled in her comfortable armchair across from women who reminded her of Mila not so long ago. "Sometimes he sends angels wearing business suits, and sometimes he sends them with bruises that match your own." The name itself, the Hug Foundation, raised eyebrows at first among traditional donors. But when Mila and David shared their story at churches and community centers across the state, those doubts melted away. They stood together at podiums, their presence complementing each other. David's quiet strength and Mila's gentle resilience painting a picture of hope. "I was running scared that day in the airport," Mila would tell their audiences, her voice steady and sure. "But God knew exactly what he was doing when he put me in David's path." David would then step forward, his hand finding hers. "Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is ask for help," he'd add, "or offer it to someone who needs it." Their story resonated deeply, especially in faith communities where abuse often went unspoken. They received letters from women who found courage in their words, from men who recognized their own need for healing, from families touched by their message of redemption through faith and love. Tyrone's shadow, which had once loomed so large over Mila's life, began to fade. His attempts at harassment backfired when his actions caught the attention of law enforcement. Multiple restraining orders and pending charges forced him to retreat from Atlanta altogether. His departure felt less like an ending and more like a weight lifting, allowing Mila to breathe more freely. One crisp autumn afternoon, Mila and David stood before the foundation's new sign, a simple but elegant design featuring two embracing figures formed from gentle brush strokes. The sun caught the gold lettering just right, making it seem to glow. "This started with one hug," Mila said softly, squeezing David's hand. "And it saved us both." David turned to look at her, his eyes full of tenderness. The man who once couldn't express his emotions now wore his heart openly when it came to Mila. "It did more than save us," he replied. "It showed us how to live again." Around them, the foundation buzzed with life. Through the windows, they could see Layla leading a support group in the community room, her hands moving expressively as she spoke. Women moved through the halls with increasing confidence, their shoulders straighter, their steps more assured. Children played in the supervised playroom, their laughter a healing balm to everyone who heard it. The Hug Foundation had become more than just a shelter. It was a testament to the power of God's timing, of second chances, of love that transforms. What began as a desperate embrace between strangers in an airport had grown into a beacon of hope for countless others seeking their own path to healing. Looking at the building before them, at the lives being changed within its walls, Mila felt tears of gratitude fill her eyes. The foundation was their love story made manifest, not just between her and David, but between broken souls and the God who healed them, between past pain and future promise, between fear and faith. David wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close as they watched another family arrive, clutching worn bags and uncertain smiles. They knew that inside, Layla would be ready with her particular blend of scripture and straight talk, of comfort and challenge. They knew that tonight, one more person would lay their head down in safety, perhaps for the first time in years. Spring bloomed across Atlanta, painting the city in soft pinks and yellows. At the Hug Foundation, Volunteers hung streamers and arranged flowers for their first annual open house. The scent of fresh-baked cookies wafted from the kitchen, where Layla supervised a team of resident bakers, her voice carrying instructions mixed with encouragement. "Remember now," she called out. "These treats aren't just sugar and flour, they're welcome and warmth for whoever walks through those doors today." David adjusted a banner while Mila arranged information packets on a table near the entrance. The Foundation's success had exceeded their wildest dreams, but they never forgot its humble beginnings. Each detail was carefully chosen to make newcomers feel at ease, from the soft music playing in the background to the comfortable chairs arranged in casual groupings. As the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, guests began to arrive. Community leaders, donors, and successful program graduates mingled with current residents, creating a tapestry of hope and healing. Children darted between adults' legs, their laughter a testament to resilience. Then she appeared at the door, a young woman with dark circles under her eyes and bruises poorly hidden by makeup. Her hands clutched her purse like a shield, and her eyes darted nervously around the room. The noise and crowd seemed to overwhelm her, and she took a half-step backward. Mila noticed immediately. Something in the woman's stance, in the way she held herself, spoke of familiar pain. Without hesitation, Mila moved toward her, her steps slow and deliberate. "Welcome," she said softly, keeping her voice gentle. The young woman flinched slightly but didn't retreat. Mila saw herself from years ago in those frightened eyes, the same desperation that had led her to hug a stranger in an airport. With careful movements, Mila opened her arms. The young woman hesitated for just a moment before falling into the embrace, her body trembling with held-back tears. "You're safe now," Mila whispered, holding her securely. "Sometimes the stranger you cling to in fear might just be the one God sent to bring you home." The woman's shoulders shook as she finally allowed herself to cry, years of tension releasing in that moment of safety. Mila just held her, understanding the power of that first moment, when someone finally feels secure enough to break. Across the room, David watched the scene unfold. His heart swelled with quiet pride as he observed Mila doing what she did best, offering others the same grace that had saved her. The Foundation buzzed with life around him. Music played softly from speakers, children giggled in the play area, and the smell of fresh cookies continued to fill the air. He thought about their journey, from that first desperate hug in the airport to this moment. Every step, even the painful ones, had led them here. The Foundation wasn't just a building or a program, it was living proof that God could turn life's deepest wounds into wells of healing for others. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, David made his way through the crowd to where Mila stood. She had helped the young woman get settled with Layla, who was already working her particular magic of tough love and tender care. David reached for Mila's hand, intertwining their fingers. She looked up at him with eyes that shone with unshed tears of joy. "Home isn't a place anymore," he said softly, his voice filled with certainty and love. "It's you." Mila squeezed his hand in response, understanding all the unspoken words in that simple statement. Together, they walked into the crowd of people whose lives they'd touched and who had touched theirs in return. The weight of their pasts had lifted, replaced by the lightness of grace and the warmth of purpose fulfilled. Around them, the open house continued, a celebration of second chances and new beginnings. Ladies from the cooking class proudly served their creations, children showed off art projects made in therapy sessions, and successful graduates shared stories of triumph with newcomers. Each person present was a testament to the power of love, faith, and the courage to begin again. The evening light filtered through the windows, casting a golden glow over the gathering. In that moment, peace radiated through the room. tangible, profound, and complete. It was the peace of love redeemed, of faith restored, of hearts forever changed by grace. The foundation's walls held not just stories of survival, but testimonies of transformation, each one beginning with the simple courage to reach out and accept help. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.